Hello and welcome back to A Beginner's Guide to Toon Boom Harmony, where we finally get to talk about the timeline. There's a lot to cover, so let's open a scene and see how it works. So, we open Toon Boom and we create a new scene. And by default, we're going to work in this window here, since today we're going to see the timeline. By default, you're going to see that your scene goes from frame 1 to frame 60. What the number of frame determines the length in time of your scene. So because there are 60 frames here, and because we are at a frame rate of 25 frames per second, this scene lasts 2 seconds and 10 frames. So if we play it with this, we'll see that obviously nothing happens on the screen, but we see the cursor going over the timeline at a speed of 25 frames per second, each little rectangle here being 1 frame, so 1/25th of a second. So we bring back our cursor to the very beginning, and if we draw in our layer like we did in the previous videos, what we see is that there is this gray rectangle that is created, and when we are on the selected layer and with our cursor on this frame, it's highlighted in pink. And we see that when you take your cursor out of the range of this rectangle, your drawing disappears. And that's because this rectangle means that this is where the drawing is in the timeline. And because it's only at the very beginning and it covers only one empty space, so 1 frame on the timeline, when you play it, it disappears instantly because your drawing stays for 1/25th of a second at the very beginning of your scene. That's why it disappears. Let's say we want it to last for 1 second. Because we are at a frame rate of 25 frames per second, we're going to go to frame 25. We can see the current frame here, so frame 25. We're going to click on the empty frame here, and we are going to press F5. If you've been using Flash, you've already seen this shortcut. However, it's probably the only one that works almost like in Flash. So what happens is the rectangle extended over several frames. And when we play it, the image stays for 1 second exactly. Now let's say we want to just manually reduce or increase the number of frames that it stays on. When you select your current drawing and the frames it's on, by using your numerical keyboard keys plus and minus, you can manually add or remove 1 frame at a time. So this is all well and good for one drawing, but now let's see how it looks like in a more complex file. Here is a previous animation I did. We are mostly going to focus on this drawing here. And we can see that when I go over to another drawing, it changes. This line here means that we are changing drawing. I will show you how to add drawing, how to copy them, how to remove some other, and so on. And we see that because we have this control, we can choose how many frames each drawing stays in timeline, and we can see that when I move forward and backward, I can see the current drawing, because your camera view will always show the current drawing at the current frame according to this cursor here, which is current frame. So this looks a bit complicated here. It's normal. It's a bit of a complex file I'm showing straight away, but let's just see the commands and basic shortcuts to just create empty drawings or duplicate drawings. So let's say I want to do the basic bouncing ball exercise, and I want it to last exactly 1 second. Here my scene goes beyond 1 second, first of all. So I can, if I want, by dragging this this line here at the end of my timeline, either further to augment the number of frames within the scene, or I can reduce the number of frames. And this is 25 frames, and this will be good if I want the animation to last for exactly 1 second. It would have to be 24 frames if you were at a frame per second, at a frame rate of 24 frames per second. But we can see here I am at a frame rate of 25, and we can see that you can also change it here if you want, but let's keep it at 25. So I'll have my first drawing of the ball, and now I want to make my second drawing, which will be the contact on the floor. Let's say I just give a very basic shadow to give an idea of the distance with the floor. I will create a new empty drawing using the shortcut Alt-Shift-R. It's not very user-friendly as a shortcut, but I will show you later how you can change shortcuts. So we can see that it's still a drawing here, but it's empty, and we can see that when I move from one to the other, the drawing change. Now, let's make that second frame, and you'll see that if I want to move from one drawing to the other, I have a very useful shortcut, in fact, two shortcuts, which are F and G. F makes your cursor move to the first frame of the previous drawing. G, it's the opposite. It makes your cursor move to the first frame of your next drawing. To show you on this more complex file here, if I press F, if I press G, I move forward one drawing at a time. If I press F, I move backwards one drawing at a time. So I'll use this here to keep this habit of what we call flipping between frames to see what was before and what I'm going to do now, so that I can have a good idea of where the ground was, how big my ball was, etc. There we go, nothing too fancy, just a ball. So I have 2 frames. Alright. If I play my scene, I only have the scene playing once. Considering it's going to be a loop, it's going to loop on itself and play on repeat, I want to activate this, which will always repeat what is being played. We can see the cursor going over it several times. And now all I have to do is create additional empty drawings to continue in betweening to create this animation. And again, Alt-Shift-R to create an empty drawing here. And I do the same. If you think that, if you assume that, if in your opinion flipping is not precise enough like this, you can activate the onion skin. To activate the onion skin, it's either this button here, or activate it on layers individually here, or with the shortcut Alt plus O. And you'll see this line with these 2 hooks appears in your timeline, and you can extend them to show drawings further in front or behind your current frame. And you can see that this area of the onion skin being showed will always follow your current frame. And so I can use this as a basis. And as some kind of help. And again, press Alt-O again, or any of the buttons I showed you to deactivate it. Of course, it's not all the parts of the bouncing ball exercises. But this is just to show you the very, very, very basics of the timeline controls for drawing. Also, if you want to create an empty frame, instead of using the shortcut, you can use this icon right here, create empty drawing. It has exactly the same effect. It's just that Alt-Shift-R is the shortcut to it, and it's what I use most of the time. Now you can also create, if you need it, let's remove this. Let's say if you want to do instead a work cycle. Same, a work cycle on 1 second. So I'm going to create a first frame. So we can see my first frame here. Just going to extend it if I want, or just, let's say instead 24 frames, just to have an even number of frames. So I'm going to extend it to 25 frames. And 24 frames, sorry. And starting on frame 13, I'm going to draw the other step. And imagine I want to use this as the basis for my other step. What I could do would be to select all of this, Control-C, create an empty drawing here, and Control-V, and just draw on this to have my other step. But this is a bit time consuming. To do things a little bit faster, what you can do is create a frame that is technically a new drawing, but that is a duplicate of the current one. And to do this, it's Alt-Shift-D. And we can see that there is this line that appeared here. And when we start drawing on the second half of our work cycle, it doesn't affect the first half. Once we have that, let's say we're going to want to make the breakdown pose, which is the pose between this step here and this step here. Going to put it at frame 7, that should be good. So Alt-Shift-R to get a new pose. I'm going to assume that the foot from here to here travels about half the distance. So let's say I'm kind of happy with my breakdown pose, and I want to copy it to use as a basis for my breakdown pose after the second step here. If I just do Control C, Control V to copy the pose, what will happen, and that's something a bit specific to Toon Boom, and if you have learned Flash before Toon Boom, it's something that you're going to have to learn. If I change something on this pose or this pose because they were copied, it's going to affect the other. If I do something here, it appears here. The reason for that is that when you copy and paste a frame in the timeline in Toon Boom, you are not just copying the drawing, you are copying the reference to a drawing. And this leads to me introducing you to a window that I haven't covered yet, that we will use a lot in cutout animation. That is the library. The library for every drawing layer is, it's a bit difficult to explain. It's basically where your new drawings are going to be stocked. And if you'll see that when you make your cursor go over the different drawings, it will refer actually to drawings that were saved in the layers library, and that appears every time they are, let's say, called. And so what happens is we can see that this part of the work cycle here is drawing number 6, and by copying and pasting it, it didn't create a new drawing, it creates another frame where drawing number 6 appears. So if we want to create another pose from this drawing, we're going to use Alt-Shift-D again, which we can see here makes it drawing number 7. And when we are applying some changes on this drawing, it does not affect this one, because this refers to drawing number 6 and this refers to drawing number 7. And we have the very basics of our walk cycle. It's a bit of an odd concept, but one of the first big traps when starting in Toon Boom Harmony is the fact that when you copy a drawing frame, you're not actually copying the drawing. You're copying the reference of the drawing. It's something that gave me a lot of trouble at the beginning, because it wasn't explained to me, and I kind of pulled my hair a lot because of this when I started out. So I think it's important to really understand this concept, the concept of the library, and the fact that copying doesn't work like it would in Flash. One last thing before I close this one. If you ever need to go forward or backward one frame at a time, there's a shortcut for that, much like F and G, but instead it's comma to move backwards and dot to move forwards. In my case, it's an AZERTY keyboard, so I had to move things around a tiny bit. But if you're using a QWERTY keyboard, it's comma and dot. Otherwise, you'd have to change a bit the shortcuts, but that's something I will cover very soon. And with that covered, you should have most, if not all, the tools you need to make frame-by-frame animation. The episode was pretty dense in terms of tools and concepts, and if you have any questions, make sure to join the Discord server I made. You'll find the link down below. And make sure to practice a lot with these tools, because it's really the only way you'll get used to animating in Toon Boom like that. It's a bit specific. The way the frames work is a bit unique, especially if you've only used either TV Paint or Flash before. So you really need to just practice and just start with simple exercises just to get the hang of how you want to handle managing your frames. With that said, join me next time as I show you how to export efficiently in Toon Boom Harmony and briefly introduce you to the node view. Until then, take care